And it's not just global corporations bracing for the impact of Trump's tariffs. Small businesses may be even more vulnerable to these expected price hikes. Joining me now, Bill Butcher, the founder and president of Port City Brewing Company in Alexandria, Virginia. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us. Just give me the big picture in your world. What would these tariffs mean to your business operations and, say, the price of a bottle of Port City Pilsner?
Yeah, thanks for having me today. The main impact we're going to see is with our base malt. And this is a grain that grows in Canada. It's a very specific, very high quality strain of Pilsner malt, and it grows in the cold climate of Canada. And we don't have a suitable substitute that grows in the United States. So for us to produce the best quality beer possible, we've been buying Canadian malt. That is the base of every recipe of every beer we make for the past 14 years. And it's proven to help us be very successful in creating full flavored quality beers. If there's a 25% tariff on this basic ingredient in our beer, it's going to take a lot of the profit margin out of our beers, and we're going to have to raise prices and pass it along to the end consumer.
So what would you, I mean, look, you're a local brewery. Customers who are very loyal to you, do you put a sticker on like the cars that says, you know, tariff surcharge? What do you say? What do you do?
Well, we're still figuring that out. We've not gotten a lot of communication from our Canadian supplier because they don't have a lot of information themselves on how this is going to go. They have told us that there will be a line item on our invoice when we get it that will reflect the tariff on the malt. But basically, it's going to increase our costs, and we'll have to pass that along to the customer. And I do expect it to slow our business down.
Yeah, you recently also opened, I understand, a Mexican restaurant at the brewery. So I guess in one sense, you have two sets of employees. How many people work for you, and are they nervous that the cost crunch will impact their jobs?
Absolutely. We have 21 full-time employees. And we have 20 part-time employees that work in our tasting room and in production support. And at the end of Q1, earlier this week, looking at the way things were ending up at the end of March, I had to lay off 2 of our key full-time employees.
I know that's never easy, and especially when you work in a small business, your coworkers become family. By the way, just seeing a picture of the exterior of your restaurant looks like a great place. Is there any way
I want to come back to sort of your centering of this whole day with that comment from the Reb. I mean, there is a thing that happened yesterday, I think, and it is the twin jolts of Cory Booker's history. He delivered the longest Senate floor speech in the country's history. The substance of what he said was incredibly moving at a lot of points. And the election results, as you pointed out, not just in Wisconsin, but in Florida, where a 15-point swing on a normal day would be banner headlines, banner conversations for days on end. What people seem to be destabilized by are the massive cuts to the federal government, the massive intrusion by an unelected billionaire into people's personal data, and economic uncertainty. And everything that's happening in the Rose Garden, even without listening to every second of it, makes those things worse, the economic insecurity and instability.
Yeah, I mean, I was, you know, as I think about this more in this conversation with y'all, here's what I think is going to happen next. What's going to happen next is Donald Trump is going to in some way jettison Elon Musk. He's gonna do it in a way that he can figure out, like, it's like, I got done what he then next. That's the first thing to happen. The next thing that's going to happen is there's Republicans that are in the House and in the Senate who are going to be running in swing districts or swing states that are going to look at those election results from yesterday and the response to Cory Booker, and they're going to react to it. And the reaction to it isn't going to be, oh, I'll support these tariffs. The reaction to it is beginning, in my view, is beginning to break with the president on certain issues so they can say, this is not all, you know, I'm not all responsible for this. This is, you know, I'm doing the thing. I'm doing what's in the best interest of my district. in the course of this. But I think what Donald Trump doesn't seem to understand in all of this, and I think I think what happened yesterday is that, as you know full well, and everybody on this panel knows, much of us have had a difficult time, and much of America a difficult time, for all the slop that Donald Trump keeps throwing out there and not knowing what to focus on. It's so many bad things that he's done and Elon Musk has done that you kind of get lost in he throws everything at the wall and you're trying to figure out what to pick and choose from. And much of the American public, I was sitting there like, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? This isn't good. I don't like this. What are we supposed to do? And we're starting to get angry at the Democratic Party because they thought the Democratic Party was not standing up enough to all the things that Donald Trump is doing. What happened yesterday, as I said, was a twofer. First, you have Cory Booker stand up for 24 hours past Strom Thurmond in the Senate and basically saying, you know, I can't do everything, but there is something I can do. And we all have to do something in the course of this. And he held this country, and I think it's up to 200 million views of what he did by the American public. 200 million people viewed that in the course of the day. Is he said we can do something. And then you see an election result where the voters stood up and said, we're going to do something. We may be only able to vote. We may be only able to get 5 people to the polls. We're going to do something. And what I think that does is gets people's feet on the ground where they weren't before and they were lost, or they might sit on their couch. What can I do? And now say, there is something we can do. And that is something that Donald Trump has not faced yet in this term.
It's about agency. And I think so much of Trump 2.0 is about mindset. I mean, all of these prestigious law firms getting down on bended knee and promising to do $100 million in pro bono work for causes Trump loves. This is over executive orders that were described as unconstitutional and illegal by federal judges, is all about a mindset. And I think to your point, Matt Dowd, what's happened in the last 24 hours is that the mindset has shifted. The idea that there is no agency, that we're locked into the Trump program, has been obliterated.
Yep, exactly. And that, I think, is incredibly powerful. And I think I think this tariff announcement is only going to add to it, because people once they get agency, then they see an action. And then they see an action, and then they see their own actions can have their power in this. They're going to now start to stand up more and more and more. And I think Donald Trump is making a mistake in the aftermath of what happened yesterday to say, basically test his presidency on these tariffs, because it's going to be an economic debate. And I think that economic debate is probably the most powerful argument against Donald Trump going into the midterms.
So, David Gura, you've been listening so that we don't have to. This is what the New York Times is reporting. Futures on the S&P 500, which allow investors to trade when exchanges are not officially open, began to tumble after Trump started outlining the tariff rates. The index had ended the day higher, but futures are now down more than 1%. How are markets responding to what Trump is still saying?
I think they're responding to the fact that this didn't allay the uncertainty that investors were worried about. So you look at that long list that he held up there. Howard Lutnick gave him that list of those reciprocal tariffs, and these are pretty sizable numbers, and we don't know if those are on top of the tariffs that have already been put in place, how long those tariffs are going to be in place, if in fact there's an off-ramp for these countries, if they look at them and blanch and think, can I negotiate out of this? Will they be able to do that? And I think a fundamental tension here, again, just has to do with the rationale for these tariffs. That's kind of in stark relief as you listen to the president talk.
Joining us to talk about this is NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans, New York Times chief White House correspondent and MSNBC political analyst Peter Baker, Moody's Analytics chief economist Mark Zandi, and Punchbowl News co-founder and MSNBC political contributor Jake Sherman. All right, Christine. The hour is near. You are here. Tell us what you know.
You know, I'm not even going to guess what the president's going to do, because the reporting has been all over the place. He has said he wanted true reciprocal tariffs. If somebody has a big tariff on a U.S. product, he's just going to flip it and do the same thing back to them. That's 200 trading partners, 12,500 tariff lines. That's potentially 2 million tariffs. That would be really hard administratively. I suspect it will be a level of tariff per country, maybe by sector. We just don't know for sure.
All right. So, Peter, On that history lesson, on the Smoot-Hawley tariff, on what happened in the Great Depression, I mean, there's a lot of consternation about doing something like this and not having a plan behind it. Is it wrong to bring up that history in a moment like this?
Well, I don't think it's wrong because it explains why you haven't seen a president do what this president is about to do. The idea of this kind of across the board tariff policy has been anathema to presidents of both parties, really, in the post-Cold War era, because, in fact, the memory of that experience back in 1930. It doesn't mean this is going to happen again. It doesn't mean this is going to be the same kind of tariff. As we just said, we don't even know what kind of tariff it's going to be. We don't know how it'll be applied. We don't exactly know who it's going to be applied to. We don't know how long it's going to be applied to. He says things all the time that don't turn out to be what he ends up doing. He likes being unpredictable. In fact, that's part of his modus vivendi. So he could put on these tariffs today and then a week from now decide, well, I made my point and take them off, and then it won't be that big a deal. If he leaves them on for years, that's a different thing. We don't know. And so it's hard to make any kind of prediction. It's hard to make any kind of plans. This is why businesses are so, uncertain at this point. They're so unnerved because they don't know how to plan for this kind of a policy.
Yeah, and he's going to be announcing it at 4 p.m. after the markets close, so we're not going to see the real effects of it until the morning. I wonder, was that pre-planned? Did they want to do this at the end of the day so that they wouldn't have to deal with any sort of immediate reaction?
Yeah, and that way you give the markets at least a few hours to absorb it before the overseas markets begin reopening in Asia, for instance, and obviously back here in the United States in the morning. You don't want it to be such an instantaneous kind of reaction that creates either a panic or just volatility of the kind that you might imagine. But that doesn't mean they're not going to be reacting tomorrow. The markets have shown in the last few weeks this is not something they're comfortable with. This is why people who invested in the market the day Donald Trump took office will have lost money, because the markets have been going down in the closest correction territory in some cases. So I think that, it wasn't an effort to kind of mitigate any immediate reaction, but that doesn't mean that there won't be a reaction.
Trump guys, they're giving up on him in the media. They're giving up on him in his staff, his employees, his Congress people. The Senate has just voted against his plans, kind of protesting against him. And remember, Trump views Republican senators as his employees. He does that. I know that's not how it actually is, but we're talking about Donald's demented brain. He views every person in Washington, at least in the federal government and on his side, including judges and all that, effectively as his employees that need to do his bidding. And a lot of these people are turning against him because his plans are insane. Not just how they're affecting neighboring countries, which we've been covering, and how they're affecting the EU, which we've also been covering a little bit, but now how it's affecting essentially every country in the world. Friendly countries, adversarial countries, some a little bit, some a ton. It's absolute madness. And people are giving up on him because they know the boat is going to sink. The economy is going to sink. It's going to hit everybody, not just big businesses, not just small businesses, not just certain types of workers. 99.99% of people are going to get, effed hard over this. And, I try not to be crude, but that's what's going to happen. And they are rightfully going to blame Donald Trump and any Republican that's stuck by him. This is going to get way uglier for him before it gets any better, if it ever does get better.